Shabbat Shalom. Rabbi Israel Meir Lau is a former Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel. He's also a survivor of the Shoah, also happens to be part of an unbroken lineage of rabbis that spans back, I think, 38 generations. As a child, he endured a slave labor camp, and later he was in Buchenwald, where he was liberated by American forces at the age of 8. He wrote an autobiography. It's a powerful book called Out of the Depths, and he recounts his experiences during the war, his aliyah to the land of Israel, and the life that he built there. One striking story, and I was reminded of it in a recent podcast in preparation for Purim, describes how the Jews of Buchenwald sought to celebrate Purim. They had no means to fulfill the mitzvot, the obligations of sending food to friends, mishloach, manot, giving to the poor, matanot levyonim, holding a festive meal, yet they refused to abandon hope. Lacking a Megillah, the text to read, they devised a plan. The older Jews in the barracks, they gathered and they committed to reconstructing a Megillah from memory. Each man wrote down the verses that he recalled, that he knew from heart, and a committee of elders sort of painstakingly put together and pieced together the text. They wrote out the verses with charcoal on yellow paper torn from discarded sacks of millet. On Purim Eve, they sat down and they read the improvised scroll. It was incomplete. It certainly didn't fulfill the halachic requirements, but it created that sense of Purim for these Jews living in death camps. It was a defiant act of resilience, for sure. This story actually offers a clue to the answer of the question, to Mark Twain's famous question, what is the secret of Jewish immortality? For thousands of years, empires have risen, empires have fallen, ideologies have come and gone, yet the Jewish people have endured through exile, persecution, unimaginable loss, because of our unyielding, oftentimes maddening, if you spend enough time with us, stubbornness. Stubbornness. It is a word that plays an important role in this week's Torah reading, Ki Tisa. The Israelites build a golden calf. God, furious, declares, I have seen this people, and they are a stiff-necked people. Am kshe oref hu. Leave me be, God tells Moses, that I may destroy them and make you into a great nation. Now, of all the words that God could have used to describe the Israelites, he calls them stiff-necked. He calls them stubborn. Now, at first glance, this seems like a flaw, a fatal flaw, a rebuke. To be stiff-necked, and think about it, if you've ever woken up in the morning with a stiff neck, what does it mean? It means that you are unable to turn your head to the right or the left. You are unable to see beyond your own limited perspective in that vantage point. It is a rigid will, a frozen mind, an unwillingness to learn. Stubbornness, in its worst form, traps us in place. It prevents growth and change, and it leads to outcomes like golden calves. Yet Moses, in pleading for the people, a couple chapters later, takes the very trait that God disdains and turns it into our greatest offense. Moses says to God, Imna matzati chen be'einecha Adonai. If I have found favor, if I have gained favor, God, Yelech na Adonai b'kirbenu, please go with us. Stay with us. Ki, I'm not translating that word. Ki, it's a Hebrew word, by the way. We are a stiff-necked people. Now, how could this be? Why would Moses use stubbornness, the very reason given 2 chapters before to destroy the people, as an argument for divine mercy? And the answer can be found in the most important word in that verse, and that word is ki, and how that word gets translated. Now, if you look in the Eitz Chaim, the book, you don't have to look at it now, I'm going to tell you how they translate it. If you look in the Eitz Chaim, it's translated as even though. So the verse reads, let the Lord go in our midst, even though we are stiff-necked. In other words, God, be kind. We are imperfect human beings. Make room for the human frailty that you planted in each and every one of us. There are other interpretations of this word. If we had time, we could look at all the classical medieval commentators who are trying to make sense of what the word ki means. This morning, I want to focus on one. And it's found in a collection of commentaries called Iturei HaTorah, and it comes from Rabbi Yitzchak Nissenbaum. Rabbi Yitzchak Nissenbaum is a 20th century Polish rabbi, early Zionist, who perished in the Warsaw Ghetto. And he offers a powerful insight. He wants to read the verse in the following way. Imna matzichen be'enecha Adonai, if I have gained your favor, God, yelech na Adonai b'kirbeinu, please go with us, stay with us. Ki am kshe oref hu, ki, he translates here, he doesn't actually translate, you'll see what he says. Because, not even though, but because we are a stiff-necked people, stay in our midst. And I want you to put on your parent or teacher hat in this moment, thinking about how we look at a child and we say, oh my God, this child is the most stubborn individual I have ever encountered in my life. And any teacher or parent worth their salt will reframe that trait to what? Oh my God, they're so persistent. That's going to pay off later in life. All right? You will benefit from your stubbornness, and we will call it persistence. So keep that in mind and listen to what he says. Almighty God, look upon this people with favor, because what is now their greatest vice will one day be their most heroic virtue. Just as they are stiff-necked in their disobedience, so one day they will be equally stiff-necked in their loyalty. Nations will call on them to assimilate, but they will refuse. Mightier religions will urge them to convert, but they will resist. They will suffer humiliation, persecution, even torture and death because of the name they bear and the faith they profess, but they will stay true to the covenant their ancestors made with you. This is a people awesome in obstinance. And though now it is their failing, there will be times into the future, he writes, when it will be their noblest strength. Stubbornness, persistence, tenacity, call it whatever you want. That's the secret. That's one of the secrets to Jewish immortality. From Mordechai, who refused to bow down to Haman, who also, by the way, always seems to be hanging out in the gates of the palace. They just can't get rid of him. To the Jews of the Middle Ages, who chose martyrdom over conversion. From the Jews in exile who maintained their faith despite immense pressure to assimilate, to the Jews who insisted on keeping traditions alive in the ghettos and in the camps, and or emerged from the darkness of the Shoah to rebuild their lives, to build the Jewish state, to essentially resurrect a people who had walked through the valley of the shadow of death and then emerged and chose life. There are two sides to stubbornness. It can be destructive when it leads to unreasonableness, when it blinds us to the truth, when it causes us to lose our perspective. But Jewish history makes the case that it can often be redemptive when it fuels our ability to persevere, to resist forces that want to erase us, to remain who we are, despite immense pressure to conform. Stubbornness is the virtue that has allowed us to survive. Now, the last year and a half has been challenging in so many ways. We feel exposed, uncertain. Sometimes we might feel unsafe. We watch events unfold, events this very week. Here in America, in the land of Israel, that reminds us that the threats to Jewish life are not distant. There are those who want us to shrink, to doubt, to disappear, to disavow the Jewish state, its leaders, its actions in this war, or to divide us into camps in this country who agree with this position or advocate for that position, all the while trying to pit Jew against Jew in these fights. And we must be stubborn and tenacious enough to refuse. Now, this is not about politics. That's not what I'm talking about. We can talk about that at Kiddush. It's about something far deeper. Our fundamental right to exist as Jews, openly and proudly. The world at this moment does not need less stubborn Jews or fewer stubborn Jews. It needs more. The stubbornness to show up when it would be far easier to fade away. The stubbornness to live as Jews, express our values unapologetically, without fear, both here and in Israel. And the stubbornness to rebuild and to support those who wish to rebuild, even after the unimaginable. Now, we don't have to look too far for role models in this regard. Gadi Moses is 80 years old, and he endured 500 days in the darkness of Gaza. He was released just weeks ago, and he sent a letter to the members of Kibbutz Nir Oz, one that I believe will become a defining call to action in the latest chapter of our history that's being written. And this is what he had to say, and I'm going to read the letter in full. To all my friends at Nir Oz, we met yesterday for the first time after about 500 days of darkness and gloom. Our home is destroyed. Each of us has lost our dear and beloved ones. Our houses are burned and our possessions scattered to the winds. We have gone through individually and collectively moments of fear and terror. I saw on your faces the existential question marks and the lack of security. I saw the fear and anger over our abandonment and neglect by those who were responsible for our security. I share all of these fears and insecurities, he writes. But from the depths of the hell we are in, I decided to gird my loins, roll up my sleeves, and join all those who want our home Nir Oz to return to being a vibrant and warm home, a home that has culture and education, health and creativity, hope and security. I call on all of us to rise, to work shoulder to shoulder so that this happens as quickly as possible. He continues, I have nothing against those whose strength has run out and at this time cannot join in. I understand that everybody processes the disaster differently, but I am confident in my ability and our overall ability to rise, to stand on our feet, and rehabilitate our home Nir Oz. What an extraordinary letter. What a people we are. It is Jewish stubbornness at its finest. Not the kind that builds idols, but the kind that refuses to be broken. This is what has kept us alive. The resilience, the unwavering belief in our future. Od lo avda tikvatenu, we have not lost hope. We have not given up hope for thousands of years. Yelech na Adonai b'kirbenu ki am kshe oref hu. God, stay with us. Remain with us because we are a stiff-necked people. That's what Moses pleaded to God, knowing that one day this very stubbornness would not be a tragic flaw, but a source of steadfast and courageous loyalty. So it was for our ancestors. So may it be for us. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for joining the Park Avenue Synagogue family. I hope you enjoyed the sermon. Please consider supporting our online community by scanning the QR code or by going to supportpas.org or by making a donation. Shalom and see you in Shul.